Welcome, everybody, to the Garf Network. I'm Matt.
And I'm Eric.
And tonight we're doing a little bit of an addendum, an epilogue to our Night 90 reunion we had just recently. We had a lot going on in the show. It was a packed house. I mean, it was almost like we could have split that show into two nights to cover everything we wanted. During the show, there was a lot, like I said, a lot going on. And during the show, we uncovered that a lot of the cast was reminiscing via a book of their own, and that was really neat. I wasn't ready for John to come out and say he was working on one, and Patty had one that's not Night 90 related, but still, Patty's very, very well known for Babylon 5 and a lot of her stunt work, especially in the Star Trek movies. And we've all seen that Tom has the storyboard book out that he was holding up for us and kept reminding us to get. Eric, tell us a little bit about John's book, because he kind of surprised us on that one.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a link for that one yet, but it's coming out, I guess, at some point within the next year, probably closer to the end of next year. It's called Night of the Living Dead, 1990, an Illustrated History. And I don't know if you got a chance, if any of you got a chance to see our Night Talks episode recently, but John Scolari came on and discussed his Night of the Living Dead picture book that he's been working on for quite some time now. And I think that this Night of the Living Dead 90 book from John Russo probably compares mostly to that one. It'd be a lot like that book. And I've seen some of the pictures. I think most of it is stuff that hasn't been on the internet or on a DVD or a Blu-ray, slideshow yet. So I'm looking forward to that. My history with Night 90, it's it's not my favorite movie in the world, but this stuff like that intrigues me. I like to see really anything that hasn't surfaced yet at this point in time. I'm interested in, and really Night 90, there's a lot of room. I feel like there's a lot of room for stuff to surface. I mean, I was poking around the other night trying to find something on. I mean, obviously we know there's materials, extended materials, but I'm curious, is there an existing extended cut that's just currently parked in a studio warehouse somewhere?
You're right. Night 90, there's a lot of love for it out there. I know a lot of people love it, but there's not a lot specifically to it. There's an article here or there. You'll see someone write about it or talk about it, but nothing in depth. So I'm kind of interested to see John's book, because the photos that he has and the recollections that he has really surprised me on the show, because I didn't know a lot of what he had talked about, and that surprised us. So I'll definitely be picking up his book and diving into that, because I'm excited.
Well, you mentioned Tom Savini's storyboards, and that was one of the books that was mentioned as you ad nauseum. He practically had it posted to his forehead at some points of the interview, but it's Night 90, the version you've never seen before.
Yes. That's
available on Amazon right now, and I don't have that book yet, but I have had a chance to look through Daniel Lowry's copy, friend of the show, and I definitely want to pick it up. And just by glancing at it, you can tell there was a lot going on that either for one reason or another they didn't have time for. Depending on who you ask, you might get a different reason. But that's a really cool book. But the one, I think actually Patricia Tallman, she wrote a book about her Babylon 5 experiences. It's called Pleasure Thresholds, Patricia Tallman's Babylon 5 memoir. It's a paperback book, and I think the other night we were throwing around an Amazon link, and it's pretty expensive on there, and I don't know if that's because it's sold out or what's going on there, but I did find a site called questretreats.com where they are selling the book for $35, and it looks like it's autographed, and that's for pretty much worldwide. She has different links for just about every corner of the planet. So I know Babylon 5 was very popular globally, and flash up an image of the cover of the book there, and it's pretty risque.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not. I unfortunately have never watched Babylon 5. I like Star Trek: The Next Generation, but I've never really gotten into a lot of the Star Trek stuff outside of the original movies. But I'm interested to hear what she put in here, because it just the little excerpt. It's a candid and occasionally spicy memoir. So I'm very interested just to learn about her experience, because we know her from Night 90 and Night Riders and some of the stuff she's done, but I don't know too much about Babylon 5. So maybe this will open up the door and I'll start watching it.
I heard Simon Pegg was a really big fan of the show, and ever since I heard him talking about it back on Spaced, I was really intrigued. So perhaps it's time to get into Babylon 5. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely check it out if you're interested in that, or just in Patricia or her career in general. And we also had this one's not out yet, but you can pre-order it. It's from William Butler, who played Tom in the Night 90 remake, or Night 90, the Night 90 remake. I guess that's redundant. It's called Tawdry Tales and Confessions from Horror's Boy Next Door. And I am interested in this. We're going to have to, I think he said it was going to be around April. We're going to need to get him back on the show for this one.
Yeah, I know when I met him last year at a convention here in PA, he was talking about it, and we were originally going to have him on when it came out, and it just kind of fell into our lap to do a Night 90 show. And yeah, I definitely want to hear about it, because he's one of those actors in horror movies you're like, oh, hey, that guy, I know him. Mm-hmm. And especially in the mid 80s and then into 90s, he was in a lot of our favorite films. And he seems
just
to have
through the synopsis here. It looks like it's kind of a full coverage. So, this looks mm-hmm. like must read material. Yeah, because like you were saying, from 87 to 91, I mean, he was popping up all over the place, especially on the horror landscape. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely. I'm intrigued, and it looks like it's a $22.99 pre-order, so not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad.
So definitely looking forward to that. And he's when you get 8 people on the line, not everybody gets a lot of mic time, but he's definitely one I'd like to get back and hear some more stories from, because he's a riot. I mean, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah, he is a hoot. Following some of his posts online, they always make me chuckle, and definitely want to do some deep dives into some of his other tales, because I mean, he was roommates with Viggo Mortensen.
That's right.
I mean, that should be a story and a half in and of itself, just to hear him talk about that. And they end up at Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw 3 together, and so I'm excited. I need to pre-order that one and get Patricia's book, so I'll have a bunch of books sitting on my shelf here, hopefully after Christmas and the New Year to dive into.
And also, we got a couple of sets of photos that were shared with us by FX artist Everett Burell. This looks like this is the graveyard zombie here.
Greg Funk
here at the beginning. Yeah,
and you can see that's Patty in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, taking a coffee break. Is that John Vulich? Is that the
Vulich.
John Vulich, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And this is the I guess kind of zombie number 1. I guess this. I don't know. This guy didn't get a lot of pub, but it's kind of like the Hensman zombie of this one.
Oh yeah, I love the special effects that they had done on this one. I like that he stands out and he comes out of nowhere. I think that's why I like Night 90 some, because I have the slow kind of creeping up on you kind of zombie in George's, and then Tom's is like, it's in your face, and gives you kind of the best of both worlds from that.
Yeah, it's not it does make an effort to misdirect, as opposed to just some bunch of lumbering zombies in the
Mm-hmm.
yard.
Yeah, and they're not cheap jump scares either. And I know people get on the jump scare kick, especially in 2020. But like you said, there was like a purpose to it. Yeah, it got you, but it wasn't just cheap. Like the scare when Tony Todd is in the house and he's looking out and that zombie comes up and just slams against the window and he kind of slides off against it. There was kind of like a payoff to that, and that's what I appreciated about Tom's.
Holy shit. Do you see this?
I see that.
Oh my God. That is fucking badass. I want that seat. Yeah, I guess he was on set a little, huh?
Yeah, Tom said what right at the more at the beginning and more at the end. I think he was.
She's looks like she's got a coffee stir. Maybe she takes a little sweet and low.
Yeah. It looks like this is probably one of the first days because she doesn't look like she's too disheveled.
Well, we'll have to zoom in on this. This is kind of a six-banger they sent us here. It looks like we got a little Uncle Rage action here in the back.
Yeah.
I tell you, I mean, I hate to be too critical, but some of the Uncle Rage is a little needed to be a little bit of tighter editing on Uncle Rage, if you ask me. Just saying. Yeah. Some of the bouncy. The camera lingers a little too long on Rubber Reach.
Yeah, especially when you're behind him and you see her hit him with the poker, you could see it do there's not enough weight to the dummy, and that was probably
when he goes down with a yank, and then before she even hits him, you can tell there's just some like fake bobbling to kind of make it. It's just that really that they probably should have. Maybe re-envision that entire little bit there. Yeah. Because I think this bastard hitting this thing head on, like had we been behind Patricia and just watched her just clobber the living fuck out of this thing, that I think that'd have been way better, like across the face, that'd have been way better than what we saw from behind. But but I think even what we had, it could have been better with just a tighter edit.
Yeah, like a couple of frames taken out to where you just see the contact, and then it cuts again. And
maybe even cuts to the real actor from the other direction falling down. Yeah. Let's see, what do we got here? This must be not Magruder, is it? Or it's the is that this? Or no, they're setting up. This must be for Dirk.
Yeah,
because where they're setting up, it looks like this must be what they hit. Yeah, look at the nose.
Oh, yeah, it's Dirk. Yeah, it looks like it's Dirk. Yep.
It must be setting up his the dummy that gets hit by Ben's truck.
Yeah.
This is another Rage. John Vulich there working on Rage. Yeah, she was. They got. I didn't know Gallagher was on set. Oops. Let's see. Was that like a? Let's see what kind of car it looks like. A Toyota Corolla, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Like a 89 or something. Here's Funk again.
Yeah, with Jack. That's Jack.
Is that Jack?
That's Jack Russo. Yep.
Let's see here. And he's, jovial Funk.
Yeah, I like the juxtaposition of the makeup and the laugh.
Yeah. And then we got Funk again. Looks George.
That's
covered
George.
Up. Is that's not Christine in front of him, is it?
That looks like her hair.
Could be, yeah.
I bet you that's Christine.
Could be. Let's see.
Yeah, George helping out.
Can't tell much else there.
No.
Guy here in the sleeveless tank.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you.
Here's another Rage.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Look at that. Is that like an eye hanging out?
Obviously that's before they put the blood on, so it looks like like a sack of pus or blood that hasn't burst.
I'm gonna have to trim I'm gonna trim these out and make a more cohesive slideshow out of these that for the video that we edit. Okay, back to production. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Everett Burell for sharing these. We were saying earlier, you don't see a lot from Night 90, and it's nice that Everett had some stills lying around that he could send us, and I wonder if there's any more, and we'll have to dig around and see if we can find anything. Just to we have Billy Butler back on or Jack or someone, and we're talking about it, and there's more photos for us to share, because I'd like to see more of the nighttime scenes with all the zombies around. Wondering what some of those guys were sitting around looking like and doing, because they had a couple of big nights, so it'd be nice to see some of the stills from that if there are.
Speaking of Jack Russo, I want to mention a special thanks to friend of the show and Garf Patreon member Misty Wood, who without her we couldn't have had John Russo on the show the other night, and she's actually sent a message in talking. She briefly shared her experiences. She actually grew up near the production of Night 90. I think she was 9 or 10 years old when it happened, but here's what she writes. She says, "When I was 9, everyone in our town was talking about the zombie movie being filmed in West Middletown and at a nearby farmhouse. My friend's dad was working security on it, and another friend's dad was a zombie extra. Not much ever happened in our town, so this was a big deal. My mom loves all things horror and convinced my dad to take us up to the little country road just above the farmhouse to watch them film. We went on quite a few days and evenings, and I can't remember a lot of it, but I was there when they did one of the final scenes where they burned a bunch of the zombie bodies. During a night shoot, someone from the crew came up and asked all of us to be a little quieter because their mics were picking up the audio from all of us watching. Another fun memory was when my mom, aunt, and I were driving on 844, and my mom noticed the security guard was not sitting at the end of the driveway anymore. She drove up to the house and nobody was around, so she told me that if anyone comes, we are looking for my puppy. I was super confused because I did not have a puppy. We looked around the outside of the house and looked in the barn and saw the makeup sign and lights, and then went over to the house. The door was unlocked, so we went in and looked around quickly and then left before we could get caught. My mom thinks filming was over at that point because there was some boxes sitting around and there wasn't really much in the makeup barn. I know it's probably frowned upon to say this out loud, but Night of the Living Dead 1990 is my absolute favorite movie, not the original, although it is a very close second. Not only is it just perfect and creepy to this day, but I also have such great memories attached to it. I also saw Night 90 before I saw the original, so that might play into it a bit. Anyway, thank you, Misty, for telling us about that. And we've always bugged her about coming on here in person. So I think just getting her to write that out was really cool. And thanks for letting us know. And unfortunately, no pictures.
Yeah. No, thank you, Misty. And if she's talking about that hill that we're familiar with, they were quite a ways away from that house.
Mm-hmm.
If they're on that parallel road, then they were a good couple of 100 yards away. So those mics were really, really good to have someone drive all the way out that driveway, up the road, and all the way back just to tell them to be quiet.
Well, I'm guessing, she was being 9 years old, probably doesn't realize the racket they were making by just running around. And
I'm sure that there were more than a handful of people there. If they were watching that, I'm sure there was a good dozen or so people making noise. But that's a fun story to hear. Thank you, Misty, for that.
We also got a couple of pieces of video that we didn't have a chance to share during the show the other night. And the first one we're going to roll out here real quick is a making of featurette that runs about 10 minutes long.
Yeah, it's really neat to see some of the behind the scenes stuff, because we were talking, there's not a lot out there. So this little featurette is really neat to show some of the behind the scenes special effects. And the one part that you'll see is Greg Funk talking about having an additional appliance on his head for an effect that we didn't really get to see. So it was really neat to see the new cemetery zombie getting made up and hearing some of the thoughts from Everett and John Vulich.
I mean, it's basically the same story, same characters, but lots of, I think George wrote the script with the intention that people who are so familiar with the original film that now we can manipulate that knowledge of theirs from the first film and scare them even more, because they'll expect some things to happen, and it may or may not. From the first time it doesn't quite happen like the first film, you're on your toes. You don't know what's quite going to happen, and that helps us scare you.
John and myself discussed that why the first film was so scary was that they were real people.
Yeah, the believability of the situation, and you could actually believe these your next door neighbors coming to life, not some wacky rubber monsters.
Yeah, they weren't like fantasy demons, and they were real people. So all the makeups in this film had to lend itself to that believability.
In doing that, we started thinking on where are we going to find a living, something that would look like a living dead. So we came upon the idea of looking at videos of concentration camp, videos from World War II, which, as distasteful as it sounds, we figured would be the closest thing to what the living dead would really look like. When we have to make someone look emaciated to give them that kind of concentration camp look, what we're doing is we're building out on their face, making their faces bigger to try to get them look like they're shrunken in, whereas on the real people, what they're doing is they're shrinking in. That was one of the little kind of things that we picked up on that I don't know if I've ever seen anybody really do on zombie makeups really before. And it kind of also shows the kind of details that we're going in for. The blood that we have mixed up in four different colors and shades. Actually, there's two different brown blood, with a thick brown blood, a regular red blood, and kind of like a plasma fluid. Because one of my pet peeves is seeing blood in film that's always red. And if it's been there for a few days, even a few hours, it would turn brown. So we kind of mix this different concoction up. And the brown blood, we actually designed it so that it would clot up and dry and even crack off, so it even have that level of realism.
We look at it as art. We look at what we do as art. We don't. The writers write all these wild things, but we look at it as a way to make it look realistic or believable, or how we think it would look. We do everything pretty scientifically. Also, we have a lot of research books, medical books, animal books, all kind of things like that, anatomy. So we look at it as art and trying to be accurate in art. Yeah, the makeup that I wore was real heavy. People asked me what it felt like. It was like someone wrapped duct tape around your head about 13 times. I had nothing of my own face was showing through the makeup except for my upper teeth, and that's it. Everything was completely covered. False eyes, the entire face was covered. A wig, a bald cap was put on first. So the only thing that was really showing was really the sides of my neck and my teeth. That was it. It took like 3 hours to put the makeup on. It was difficult wearing the makeup, for the effect they wanted was dead eyes. Tom really liked the idea of dead eyes, and John Vulich and Everett Burell, the guys I was working for, did a design with false eyes over top of closed eyes. So they wouldn't blink, they wouldn't look around. Human eyes, if you move your head, your eyes stay very stationary. And Tom loved that look so much that they worked it out. John Vulich did the makeup. It was a great job. Doing a fight scene and not being able to see, it was like trying to jog with your eyes closed. But it was just very difficult. We had to rehearse, and just when I was, say, attacking Barbara, I had to, in one shot, I think, like wipe her glasses off of her face. And I could have poked her eye out. But just, yeah, to wipe her glasses off, and then rip, I think, a button on her shirt, and then rip her skirt all in one take. It was like rehearsing something with your eyes closed, and everything had to be exactly the same. And it was just a motion, like a dance, I guess. The scene where I fall down with the Johnny dummy I was very nervous about that the whole day, waiting for it to happen, and because I was falling with a dummy, using the dummy as a pillow between myself and a real tombstone. I felt confident that I could aim it properly, and also we had stunt eyes made that were like screens. It still looked like there were the fogged iris, but I could see through them, barely. I was more worried about hitting my shoulder or a part of my face off the tombstone, but once the first time I did it, it was just the way I hoped it would be. But I really had to calculate that pretty carefully on the way down. Not much room for error. The evening of my demise was it was a nice night. First of all, like we were talking about, it was warm for the first time. It was starting to become spring. The makeup this time was more involved. I was my head was set to explode. Jerry Gergely designed a squib hit, front and back, entrance and exit. And that involved another piece on top of my head. It was actually very big, but you couldn't tell the way it was designed and blended in. And there was a blood bag under there with 2 squibs in front and 1 big squib in back. So I had to walk down, keeping my head in a position where I wouldn't turn to see the apparatus in the back of my head, plus my eyes looking down through that little slit where I could see in my one eye, and I had to walk about 12 feet, stop, turn, get shot, fall down, and hit a mat that was behind me. It was pretty involved. I was pretty nervous, really geared, totally concentrated the whole night. It was kind of amazing. So everything went well. We had a lot of good luck that night. The effect worked perfectly the first time. I think that was good because then it looked more lifeless. They cut it out of the film.
And in the context of Night of the Living Dead, these people have to be shot in the head for them to die. If you don't show that, well, is that guy still walking around back there? Is he dead? Did they get him, I have to show head hits. Now, there's a few that have been cut by the MPAA. Now, here's the case where censorship affects the storytelling aspect of this particular film, Night of the Living Dead.
Actually, I came into the business through magic. When I was pretty young, my main interests were in magic and in film. And if you marry the two together, it does end up being special effects. When this location was described to me, it was told to me as being a very wide open area. When I came up on top of the hill and saw where this truck and gas pump are situated next to the shed, I took a step back because I wasn't expecting it. It is within very limited margins. Because of that, I have to very severely be careful on directing the blast. These two guys here, these are my arms. This is the full special effects team. This is Jeff DeParstek, this is Rick DiCarlo. Everything is a team effort, everything that has to be done, whether it's running the wires, placing of the bombs. Their main job is that when we're finally setting the actual explosives, and it's my responsibility because I'm the boss who's there on the platform pouring the gasoline. These guys are on the other end of the wire, making sure there's absolutely no chance of any transmission going down those wires that will force me to tread air. We are going to be creating the illusion of having the gas pump explode when a shotgun blast knocks the hose off the pump. The gas pool will spread across the ground, hit a torch. The gas will then ignite the ground, have a ground fire spread across the ground, across the gas pump deck, hit the gas pump, blow up the gas pump, obliterate one of our main characters in the film, giving the zombies an opportunity to have a barbecue. That's our job, to create that illusion. Any illusion, no matter what it is, any effect, no matter what they come up with, can be done, given the proper amount of time, given the proper amount of precautions, given the proper amount of talent to pull it off. The bottom line when you get to the set is that safety factor.
All right, let's start clearing the field of all non-zombie personnel, please. Okay, that's good position on the zombies. Nice and slow, zombies, nice and slow, and action.
I hope that people, I think they will, come away saying that clearly Tom Savini felt a responsibility to the fans of the first film, because look what he gave us. He gave us so much, hopefully, of the first film in this remake.
Okay, for this final video clip, this is runs about 3 minutes long, and this is something that I think the editors put together just as a little goof. I don't have the full story on this, but this is definitely some primo material here. Did you have a chance to catch this one yet, Matt?
Yeah, it's I guess a gray card test to look at the exposure and the lighting, and it almost kind of plays as a gag reel, because a lot of times they're holding the cards up and they're making faces, and it kind of feels like they should put some Benny Hill music behind it just to round it out, because it does look like they were having some fun on set.
Like some Right Said Fred, Too Sexy for My Shorts. Something. You have, I believe I saw Nick Mastandrea, Bomba was in there. All sorts of Romero alumni pop up in this clip. So.
Yeah, it was a fun little surprise.
All right, everybody find a place and sit down, please. Walking towards us, please. Quiet, please. You all set? Is everybody set? Right. Roll sound.
They're creepy and they're kooky, mysterious and spooky. They're all together ooky. The house is a museum. When people come to see them, they really are a scream.
Neat, sweet, petite.
Nice going, Tom, huh?
All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this Night 90 supplemental episode. It was just such a jam-packed episode the other night that we didn't have a chance, or there really was no, logical moment to slip this in. It was kind of chaotic, but in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, everyone was just telling stories, and it was funny watching them all of a sudden remember something that they probably haven't talked about now in 30 plus years. And that's the fun part of the show, is we just kind of roll with it. And when those memories and stories come up, it just opens so much more opportunity to recall old memories. And, doing stuff like that is fun. But then coming back and being able to do a supplement to the episode where it doesn't get lost with all the talking, you can just kind of watch it, I think is going to help make it even more fun to watch.
I was thinking about it because we, in planning for the episode, there was a lot of different folks we were tossing around to try and gather together. And I think there's enough left over to round them up and do it one more time once we get the right bunch of folks together. Because there's certainly some more folks we need to hear from that film and we've said it a few times now, right before the featurette, there's just not a lot. I mean, I feel that there is a lot out there that just hasn't been put on a disc, and there's certainly room for documentaries, effects, making ofs. I mean, just we need a full. And I think Tom even mentioned some Australian disc, and I'm somewhat familiar with that. But I mean, we need like a Shout Factory. We need a legit United States special edition.
Yeah, that's the Blu-ray from Umbrella.
That's
Umbrella
right.
Films.
Umbrella.
Yeah, I want to say Umbrella Academy because Everett Burell's working on it, but I have that disc, and it's a beautiful looking disc. And they actually, I think they released 2 different versions. One of just the Night 90 version, and there's a second version where it has the Night 90 poster, and halfway down the cover, one half is color, one half is black and white, and they packed it with the original film.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't have that one, but I just thought that was a really neat way to package the movies. But yeah, there's a lot of meat on the bone for Night 90 left, and I think we have to do some digging around and scratching underneath the surface because there's a lot more that I think we could do in terms of shows and just getting information out there, because it's one of those films that gets a lot of talk because it's a lot of people's favorite remake of not just George's films, but I think in general a lot of people really hold it in high regards as one of the best remakes that's ever been put out.
No, there's no question about that. And, whether I celebrate it despite me not thinking it's the best thing on earth, but there's no question the reaction that we got behind it. I mean, it's people are into the movie. It deserves a spotlight to be shined upon it more so than it already has. But yeah, and it's definitely it's a grower. As more generations become familiar with these films, I find that the Night remake stature elevates considerably.
Yeah.
So 10 years from now, we'll be talking about it, side by side with, Dawn of the Dead, perhaps. Who knows?
Yeah, I see a lot of folks introduce their kids to Night of the Living Dead and then almost immediately show them the remake so that it goes to the power of what Tom did. And I think someone like Tom remaking that movie when he did, I think helps it stand the test of time. I mean, 30 years later, here we are still talking about it, and the fans are still talking about it. It's not one that kind of faded into obscurity. It's always kind of been there. It's almost like a fourth Romero movie in that that original trilogy.
Unofficial, stepbrother to the original trilogy. Yeah. Well, and you notice as soon as that announcement went up, there was some people like, oh yeah, we're there. I mean, there was a certain dedication that I was feeling towards that film. And I can say this, that even in the 90s, the mid 90s, I think I had taped it off of HBO or something. And, I was a huge fan of the original film, but often I would go to the remake if I were introducing people to it. I just felt it had a better chance at landing or hitting the mark with a new audience or maybe a non-horror fan. So I, probably more often than not, I would show them the remake as an introduction.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about the remake is it's kind of timeless. It's really withstood the test of time. It doesn't look dated. It really doesn't feel dated in terms of the style or the technology, outside of a few instances. So it's one of those you could watch, and it could have taken place in 2000, 2005, 2015, and it's not trying to be something it's not. Tom just made the movie without trying to put a stamp on it or make it seem like a period piece. It just it flows. It's like the original movie. It just kind of flows, and I can go either that or the original Night any day of the week. If someone's like, do you want to watch Night of the Living Dead? And the first thing I'm going to go is which one, because it's one of those two. I'm happy watching either one of them.
Yeah, I'll give you that because it is a worthy question, and I've asked it numerous. Well, which one do you want to watch? Whereas, if you ask me if I want to watch, although I do like the remake, if you're asking me if I want to watch Dawn of the Dead, I'm not thinking about the remake, not ever, not ever. But if you ask Knight, that's a worthy. I'm not offended by that question.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
it's not. Excuse me. It's not one of those films where you have to stop and think about, well, which one do I want to ask about it? They go hand in hand. It's not like, well, do you want to watch Texas Chainsaw or the Texas Chainsaw remake? Or, they don't kind of put the emphasis on the remake. They just kind of say, well, Night 90 or George's. It doesn't have a remake stigma to it. Like a lot of the other films in horror do.
And you mentioned a little bit about the timeless aspect. I think, I don't know how much of that naturally just lent itself to the production. I mean, I know they, Ben had like the old truck like he did in the original. And for whatever reason, now that you mention it, that Mercedes that they're driving, I mean, it's that could be a 91, that could be an 04, and the clothes they're wearing could have been 1968 or 1990. So I've never really thought about that. It's definitely not, but I have kind of, I don't know, keyed in upon there is a bit of an adulty, I hate to say the word adult. I just say adult horror aspect just because I was, around 13, 14 when this came out. And to me, horror at the time was like Elm Street 5. You know what I mean? So this is not Elm Street 5.
Well, and Tom wasn't playing to tropes or cliches.
Yeah.
That movie dealt with a lot of adult relationship themes. But it's still a movie that kids can identify with because they're zombies and they're under attack. So as an adult, as you grow into the movies, you start seeing how complex these very new relationships are under that stressful situation, and whether or not they're going to make it out of it or what's going to happen. I think it's just one of those, you have to watch to the end. You're not going to if you've never seen Night of the Living Dead, you can't telegraph what's going to happen in either one of those movies. You can't say, oh, well, this person's going to definitely live, 10 minutes into the movie, like you can with almost any movie now.
I would almost compare it, like, as far as like the plot, the way that it changed, from the original. I would compare it almost to like one of the, I don't know if you had a chance to do like the Resident Evil 2 reimagining or whatever, or just occasionally, you're expecting that cop to be dead behind the phone booth, and then it's like, oh, he's not there this time. It's really pretty much about like that. It's not, it's not groundbreaking. It's just you took a left where the other film took a right. I think the biggest thing is probably Barbara. That would be the biggest difference.
And I think it was probably the most appropriate change you had to make for the movie, because
for the era,
roles of women changed in society and in film in 22 years. And had she been played as the original character was, I don't think that film would be held as in high regard as it was, or as it is, because of that change that Tom made. I think that's a wonderful addition to that film, because he didn't really change much of anything else. He just updated one character to make it fit into a new time frame. And I think that's something that's applauded. Because people really love the badass Barbara in that remake. And that's something that I think comes up very early in any conversation when you talk to someone about that remake and what they like about it. And they're like, oh, Barbara was awesome.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for checking out our Night 90 supplemental episode. Maybe this is something we'll do in the future when we just have an overabundance of materials and can't get it onto the live show. But I appreciate you guys watching this, and hope everybody has a Merry Christmas. I'm Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And we'll see you next time on the Garf Network.
Merry Christmas.
Emergency. You are
Kingsley speaking.